The book begins with the main character, Idris, facing a challenge or a rite of passage to become a man. Tell me a little bit about this character, Idris, and his personality. I want to give the readers an opportunity to kind of get inside his head a little bit.
To begin with, you don't know much about Idris. You know, he's this he wants to become a man, but he's in effect a boy, at least for his tribe. But he's very passionate. He's a bit of a dreamer, so he has these grand ideas, and you kind of see that in the rite of passage he undertakes. You know, normally in this rite of passage, people would choose one way, but he thinks, no, I'm gonna do something big, and so he sets out to do something big. And you know, as sometimes happens with people like that, it's bigger than what they expected, and suddenly he needs help. But because he's very loyal, is very determined. I don't want to spoil too much for you, but that comes through. He does find help, but that determination to accomplish what he set out for is definitely present all the way through the book and all the way through his character. At the beginning, Idris starts out at 16 summers, and it's the right time for him to go on this rite of passage. But he's very proficient in the longbow. His dad trained him in the longbow from when he was 4 or 5 summers old, so he can use that very well. He also, you know, he can use traps to hunt, and he's very proficient in the forest, as a lot of his people are. But he's got this, like I say, this dreamlike characteristic where he dreams big. He's got this particular determination to do things different to what have been done before, and that holds him in good stead throughout the novel, but it also gets him into a few little sticky situations as well.
What is Idris's motivation for choosing the path of the warrior? And how does this choice near the beginning of the book affect where he goes and what he does throughout the remainder of the book?
Part of this rite of passage that Idris goes on, when you complete it successfully, everybody who participated has to choose kind of a pathway. So they're going to become a man, but they have to add to the tribe in some way. They have a role to play now. So there's different pathways to choose from. And for Idris, he's always been focused on one path, and that is the path of the warrior. And so for Idris, he wants to be a warrior for some very specific reasons. Because the nomadic tribes of the West, they're very separate from the rest of the world, and they don't really fight amongst themselves. But they still train in the way of the warrior, because it's also a way of honoring a memory of this famous ancestor called Noiro, and he was known for laying down his life for others. And so Idris sees the value in that. He wants to be one who stands up and says, hey, I will lay down my life for someone if that's what it takes, you know, to make this world a better place, to make this tribe work, and to make my people survive.
Give me a description of the quest or the mission that Idris embarks on during this book.
You know, Idris chooses this path of the warrior, and as part of that, he has to go away, leave his family for a certain number of years, and he goes to this place called the Eileen, which is separate to the main landmass. It's just a small island on the coast, and there's this warrior training school, and people from all over the Silurese tribes come together. All those who have chosen the path of the warrior, they come together on that island, and they train together, and they learn how to defend one another and how to defend their people. Now, later in the novel, Idris has to call on a lot of those skills, and later in the trilogy, you know, it becomes a very crucial part of the storyline. But I don't want to go into too many details yet, because that's my secret for now.
So we know that Idris is the main character, and he's the protagonist. Who is the antagonist in this book? Or is there some sort of greater peril that you would say encompasses the role of antagonist?
So, this is a fantasy novel, and in this world of Pangea, there are mortal people, there are immortal people, and there are gods. And the main antagonist of this novel is Shagar, who is, in essence, he's a fallen god that wants the world to basically worship him. And so there's this conflict of him pulling the strings, and he's really behind the scenes kind of pulling the strings of the different events that are happening in this world. And I won't give much more away than that, but Idris kind of, you know, learns about him as he goes along, and I want you to learn about him as he goes along. But he uses a lot of other villains and, you know, evil people. So there's this one scene with Aoife, who is essentially Shagar's secret hand. So she goes out and is kind of undercover for him and deals with enemies before they can become really powerful and rise up against Shagar. And so you do get to meet her. She's a very unique character, a little bit of a cross between Medusa and Midas, and I don't know if you've ever seen Electra, but one of the villains on Electra as well. She's a little bit, I think she's very unique. She's a cross between a lot of these different villains, and I really loved her. I'm going to actually give her her own story at some point, because she's got a very powerful story, a very tragic past, and is a very powerful enemy. So as the trilogy evolves, and into book 2 and book 3, you do see a lot more of Shargar. He comes much more to the forefront. You're not just hearing rumors about him, but you actually get to see him. And there's certainly going to be this epic scene between Idris and the allies and Shargar on the other side.
Tell me about some of the other central characters that Idris meets along the way.
So Idris is obviously the main character, but then you have his sister Mari, and she kind of disappears for a while and then comes back towards the end, and you just get the feeling all the way through that she's got some other part to play, and she does. Then you have Kellen, who takes the role of this prophet. Him and Idris were great friends when they were younger. Their paths separate them for a while, and he kind of comes back and is almost a catalyst for the events that happen. Then you've got May, who's this mysterious woman from the Eastern Empire who ends up being some kind of warrior and kind of comes alongside Idris for part of it as well.
There are many fantastical characters that come alongside Idris and either bring him aid or try to harm him in some sort of way. Give me a little bit of insight into some of these characters and describe briefly their roles.
So yes, there are several different fantastical creatures in this novel. The novel kind of kicks off with this Behemoth, who, as you can imagine, is this huge beast of a creature that Idris faces off against. I don't want to go into too much detail there, but it certainly is used to help you as a reader understand Idris's motivations. And then later in the novel, you have the Chanoths, and these are a very intelligent creature, and one of them, called Sandrin, comes to Idris's aid, and there's a bond that is formed between them, and that bond carries on throughout the whole trilogy. But the thing about Pangea is what's happening, the events that are occurring affect not just the world of humanity, not just the world of the immortals, but every creature that is on Pangea will be affected by how this turns out. And so all the creatures on Pangea have a part to play.